Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritually Boujee Astrology, and we're going to take a look at the astrological transits of December 15th to December 21st. Now, a couple of quick little things before we get started, and that is one, I am still on limited communication. Here's some great advice, everybody. Don't file an Apple Care claim at Christmas. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. I'm still on limited communication for a couple more days. Don't know when that's going to get solved. I keep kind of hypothesizing like it started in the full moon, that maybe it gets fixed by the new moon. And that would be this week. Foreshadowing. We'll get to that here in a second. Two, I'm reminding everybody that effective January 1st, the base pricing for my sessions is going up. There is a price increase coming in January. And now I want to make sure everybody is kind of aware of that. So if you still want to book at the lower rate, I don't want to say discounted, but it is lower rate. You still have time to do that. So you can go to the website, www.thespirituallyboujee.com. You can see that right here. Go to astrological services, coaching sessions, the multi-package sessions, personalized horoscopes, and you can do gift certificates. Now, the best part of this, or the best part of the package would honestly be the multi-package session, because I do a discount automatically, and you can still technically book 60-minute sessions at $35 a piece, but you're buying 5 at a time. Now, the one thing that I have had people ask for me to do whenever this is going on is, instead of buying 5 packages for themselves, they want to buy it as gift certificates. You can do that, but you can't do it through the website. You have to email me directly. I send you a PayPal request, blah, 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 blah. There's stuff to do, but it is still an option. It's just not something that I put on the website, because there's been a handful of people asking for it, but not enough for me to put on the website. So if you want that, you can do it. You have to email me directly, Dustina at thespirituallyboujee.com. Okay. Moving along. This is going to be an interesting week. This is going to be an impactful week. I'm not going to say it's the biggest week of the year, it's the craziest. I'm not saying any of that. It's more along the lines of, we have shifts underway, and we've had them going for a while. And I keep warning, like, once we get into the Capricorn transits, that's whenever we're really going to start to feel something going on. We'll see something going on. Well, guess what, baby? We start that this week. We start that this week. 2 planets are going to change signs. Mars is going to go into Capricorn at the start of the week. That is literally how we're going to start this weekly forecast. And by the end of the week, the sun will move into Capricorn, and we will officially start winter, because the start of the cardinal seasons, i.e., Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra, are the start of new seasons. So once the sun goes into Capricorn, we will officially go into winter. It'll be the winter solstice. There you go. We have the arrival of planets into a new sign. In addition to that, Mercury is going to leave shadow this week. What does that mean? Any things that we've been going back and forth on, rethinking, revising, needing to have certain conversations, but haven't quite had them yet. We're going to be in a situation where we can finally have them this week, or we can finally come to terms with just like, I don't need to have the conversation. I just need to go cold turkey and not do this anymore. Sometimes that alone is the perfect way to handle something. We have Mercury leaving shadow this week. But the other thing that we have going on is the new moon in Sagittarius. Now, that's going to be closer to the end of the week. But once the moon goes into Sagittarius, we're going to be in new moon vibration, new energy, a revision of sorts, while simultaneously planets are shifting into a new sign. Now, the thing about the Capricorn transits that are really pushing something forward is the fact that we are wrapping up Saturn in Pisces over the next 2 months, quite literally the next 2 months. He will move into Aries on February 13th. So it's 2 months left. Over the next 2 months, Saturn will be solidifying his reign, whether it has been a good one or a bad one, it's a reign, through the sign of Pisces. He's going to be wrapping it up and transitioning into a new sign. But before we can actually get an idea of what his focus is going to be in that new area of the sky, we have to put a few things into place. And that is going to be the things that go on over the next 2 months as we solidify certain connections, certain transitions, certain industrious type things. Please note how I'm saying that. Some of y'all going back into a hustle mentality. And there's a reason for that, and I need to do a meditative rant. I just haven't had the time to do it, to explain why. But for some of us, there's a hustle mentality. There's a gear shift. There's something we are wishing to accomplish, a productivity that's feeding into the vibration. We are wanting to be productive doing something. We are looking at a gear shift into a new direction, meeting with new people, doing new things, leveling up in many, many ways, accepting a challenge. And over the course of the next few months, we are literally putting the first pieces onto a board that will become our focus over the course of the next 2 years, i.e., all of 2026 and all of 2027. We are putting things into place for what will be the first wave, the first acknowledgement, the first round towards the vibration that I keep referring to as our new normal, because that's what we're going into, our new normal. It's going to be very opinionated. It's going to be very volatile at times. It is going to be very motivated, and things are going to go fast. You thought 2025 was fast? No, wait till 2026. It is going to fly by, charge ahead, and put a lot of new things forward. And this week, we see the first glimpse towards the new normal. We get the first piece onto the board. For a lot of people, this week will harness an arrival. Now, I want to be real clear about that. The first transit we will talk about is Mars going into Capricorn. That is how we start Monday. But late Sunday evening, there was a little sextile between the moon and Mars, between the moon, before the moon shift signs, and Mars shift signs. For some people, there is a disruptive piece of information. There is a disruptive act. There is a disruptive arrival. How you perceive disruption will really put an inclination as to whether it is a pivotal disruption or chaotic disruption. For some people, the disruption is going to be aggressive. It is going to be chaotic. It is going to be frustrating. It is going to be infuriating. There is not going to be a whole lot of control. One of the things I talked about last week in last week's episode is like there's an optimism, there's something in the air, there's a motivation. But for some people, it wasn't going to be the positive side. It was going to be the impulsive side. And y'all really lived up to that impulsive vibration last week. I want to be clear about that. The impulse is still real, but that impulse is now feeding into something new. That new is an arrival. And for some people, it is going to be chaotic. And for other people, it will be pivotal. This is the way I look at Mars. Mars is disruptive no matter what. He is the god of war. Of course, he's going to disrupt some things. The reason I go into the idea of either chaotic or pivotal is because if he's not being the god of war and destroying everything and creating damage and creating wounds and creating acts of frustration or violence or anything else to war that you can put into play, if we're not being destructive, the opposite would be being constructive. And it would be ambitious, and it would be building, and it would be focused and motivated and determined and driven. This would be the counterbalance. For some people, there will be chaos. There will be frustrations. There will be things that come through that really ignite certain frustrations. But for other people, there will be things that come through that really ignite a direction, a path, a challenge that we are willing to accept. This week, we place the first pieces onto the playing board. For some of you, it's going to be chess. For some of you, it's going to be Chinese checkers. It's going to get real complicated. That's why I'm saying it that way. But we are putting our first pieces onto a board that will be the new game being the new normal in 2026. Expect arrivals this week. Expect news. Expect some frustrations. Expect a different level of accountability based off of the things that come through. And there is still an impulsiveness in the vibration because we still have a lot of planets going through Jupiter signs, but most specifically the Sagittarius version that is feeding into the impulse. It is feeding into the belief, the optimism, but definitely the version of impulse that is fueled. It's not like an Aries transit. That's the difference. Oh, I always compare like Sagittarius to Aries. Aries is very impulsive in the sense, but he's accepting the challenge. Like, I'll do whatever I need to do. Motivation. You tell me I can't do it, I'm going to do it twice with bells on. Like, don't tell me I can't do something. Sagittarius energy is not like that. It's like we go into it with a belief. We go into it with an idea. We go into it with this passion and a fueling. And sometimes the fueling can be very blinded, but other times it's fueling manifestation. It's fueling a whole different concept towards belief. And this is why I was comparing it to optimism. There's still a fire in the energy. But in addition to the fire, there is an arrival because we have two planets changing signs. We start the week with Mars. We end the week with the sun going into Capricorn, getting closer and closer to Mars, getting closer and closer to a point where we're going to have certain things come to light, come into focus, shift into reality, become discovered in certain ways. There is discovery on the horizon. And the first decisions, the first inklings, the first ideas, the first players, the first few pieces on the board start this week. They start this week. And it's going to get really interesting because as much as there can be impulse based off of the Sagittarius parts of the transits, there is also this grounded version of motivation that's feeding into it that feels unstoppable once we commit. The problem is some people have no idea the new that's coming through. You are not tuned in. You have not picked up on the signs. You're not aware of anything coming through for one reason or another. You're looking for something big in the sky, not realizing it's something right under your nose. And the way that you receive the disruption of this week can make the difference of pivotal or chaotic. If you are prepared for something new to come through, it's going to make it easier to manage, even if you are somebody who is going to be blindsided by parts of the vibration. Because I know some people have been very much struggling with understanding parts of the new. Now, there's one other transit to this week, but I don't want to focus on it too much at the beginning. I actually want to focus with a story at the end, and that is the second square between Jupiter and Chiron. The first square happened the week of October 20th. You remember me beating up that week for so long? Like, look, this week is important. The energy, the pattern, the energy, do the opposite. That was my key thing. Do the opposite. And for some of you, you were able to pick up on it very quickly as to why the opposite was necessary. And a big part of that came through the Jupiter-Chiron square, because there was something about how we approach something, how our beliefs, our learned behavior fed into vibrations, but also had this impulse around wounds. And over the last 2 months, because it's been just about 2 months now, we have been gauging an interest towards trying to unlearn behaviors and doing the opposite. And the people that actually did exactly that, they figured it out, you did the opposite, you didn't repeat the pattern, you were able to start unlearning a certain vibration. And I want to explain why that was my mentality and that was my advice, but I want to do that at the end. Because again, one of the things that were going to happen this week, closer to the end of the week, is the second square between Jupiter and Chiron. Now, go to the ending for the rest of that. Let's get into the transits. Let's get into the week. Let's get into Monday. Okay. Now, right before midnight, the moon went into Scorpio. The moon was in a sextile to Mars at 29 degrees of Sagittarius. There's some final wave, some final news towards the disruption, towards the new actions, towards the new desire, towards the new idea that for some people is going to shake up an insecurity. And that comes through the moon going through Scorpio. Right after this 1:30 marker, if I bump this now to 2:30 in the morning, Mars changes signs. So again, 1:30 a.m., Mars 29:59. At exactly 1:34 a.m., I'm not going to bump this by minute, that's why I bump it by hour. That is when Mars goes into Capricorn. And this is where he is going to be until the very end of January. So we got a good 6-week spell of Mars in its exaltation. Mars does very, very well in Capricorn. He is studious, he is industrious, he wants a challenge. Now, this can result in disruptions around elders. I want to be clear about that. Disruptions with bosses and CEOs. And this only comes down to karmic levels of accountability, so to speak. Like, accountability is the big thing if they're going through disruption. But if we're not going through disruption, then it's the motivation, then it's the direction, then it's the hopes, and then it's the desires. So Mars arrives into Capricorn. For some people, late Sunday night, based off of the moon changing signs, there's an arrival. For other people, it is more so going to be between Monday and Tuesday, because that will be the very beginning of Mars in Capricorn. And right as Mars is entering Capricorn, we have our other transit for the day. There's not a whole lot to Monday, but I feel like there is an energetic motivation that I feel like people are going to be feeling a different level of impulse, a different kind of reflection, a different kind of responsibility. Between 1:30 and 3:30 a.m., so I got it at 2:30, so we're just about exact, the moon in Mars's sign, right after Mars changed sign. So let's be clear about that. But the moon is hitting a square to Pluto. This is how I accomplish something. This is what I must face. This is how I get over my fears. This is how I put something forward. This is how I make a change. For other people, it is going to be speaking some type of hidden truth that is going to be triggering for some people, moon square Pluto. But this hidden truth also kind of feeds into the arrival. Hidden truth, hidden emotional needs, hidden emotional desires. And I'm going off the fact that now the moon is in Mars's sign. Now, the one thing I will say is we don't have the levels of triplicity like we had this week. We will have it by the end of the week. But at this moment, we don't have that because Mars has changed signs and we finally have something moving out of Jupiter signs because that's where a lot of the energy has been for a while. Okay. Now, when it comes to Monday, after these midnight to 3 a.m., just rounding it out, transits, there's no other transits to the day. Now, I'm not saying other things can't happen, and I'm not putting a timestamp as to if it doesn't arrive at 1:30 in the morning, then it isn't an arrival. Please don't do that. The human effect is things can come through at any point in the day, and it really comes down to if parts of your natal chart is being highlighted. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But there is something new in the vibration, new in the path, new in the direction. For some people, the arrival, the new is going to be disruptive. Well, it's disruptive anyways because it's Mars, but for some people, it's chaotic disruption. For some people, it is pivotal disruption. So we're going to keep this going. We're in this vibration all day long. There can be certain things that are being brought to the surface, that are being brought to light, that are being brought forward. And now we're going to get into the 16th. Now, what I want to say is all throughout the 16th, Mercury is wrapping up its shadow walk. It's wrapping up its walk of shame. By the end of Tuesday, Mercury will leave shadow. So that's a big part here. But that also means some of the things that we have had delays on since the beginning of the Mercury retrograde, we're going to finally be able to pick up on them. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of November, just to be clear for everybody. Okay. Now, the thing about the day is it's kind of like Monday. There's not a whole lot going on. We are still in this 0 degrees of Mars, so we can still have elements of arrival. We can have some things that bring up some insecurities, hidden desires, I'm saying hidden because the moon is in Scorpio, but it might not be hidden in the sense of like, I've been keeping a secret from you. Sometimes it's just, you don't know what you don't know. And that's the element of hidden. But there's something about things that have been going on behind the scenes, below the surface, plans that are needing to start being enacted over the course of Monday and Tuesday. This is a big part of the arrival energy. And we're not going to get into our first transit of Tuesday until the evening time. And now we're at it right here. Between 7:30 and 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Jupiter, 23 degrees 8 minutes, is going to go through a trine to the moon, 23:0 right here. Jupiter is in the higher authority. Jupiter still hosting all of this energy. And Jupiter's very aware of the final things that Mars did in the sign of Sagittarius. So there is elements of like awareness and also emotional, empathetic understanding. Jupiter is in the moon sign. And the water signs are heavily emotional. We go into traumas, we go into levels of healing. We're talking about our emotional needs, our emotional desires. And sometimes we just need to get a better understanding as to why we don't feel safe expressing certain emotions, or why we needed to make a change at this moment, and how we wish to progress from here. There is understanding, emotional understanding on a multitude of levels. This can either be the discussion about what needs that we have in our healing process, or again, our desire of what we take forward. Now, the reason I'm saying it that way is I'm also looking at the fact that Jupiter hosting all of these planets between Pisces and Sagittarius, but I'm going to focus on Mercury for just a second. Right as Jupiter goes through its trine to the moon is when Mercury leaves shadow. This is actually going to go exact roughly right around that 9:30 p.m. standpoint, but the moon is still in the trine with Jupiter whenever that's going on. So over the course of this emotional understanding, there's also beliefs, there's also impulse, there's also additional levels of knowledge. And again, we're able to take something forward that we weren't aware of before, or we didn't know how to take forward before, given this part of the vibration. Okay. Mercury's going to leave shadow. The moon's going to go through that trine with Jupiter. And then right in this 10:30 area, the sun is going to hit a square to Saturn. You can actually see that exact right here. Here's the sun, 25 degrees, here, 28 minutes. Here's Saturn, 25 degrees, 28. We are very much exact. This is happening right after Mars went into Saturn sign. And there is an awareness towards the rules, Sun square Saturn. There's an enlightenment towards the actions we're going to take, because remember, Saturn is now hosting Mars. Some parts of this is going to be around the boss, the rules, the laws, the contract, the stipulation of the rules, the responsibility, who's responsible for what. Some people will be accepting responsibility. Some people will get some type of judgment or awareness of like, this is the action that we're going to take. This is the desire that we're taking. And this is going to impact more than one direction or more than one sign. Because while the sun is going through its exact square to Saturn, the moon is starting to enter a trine, but it's not quite there yet. But there is like this direction. Here are the rules. Here's the process. Here's the procedure. Here's the judgment. Here's the decision. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're starting. Here's what we've decided on. Now, the thing about the sun square Saturn is it's exact around 10:30 in the evening. But this is feeding into the energy all day long. So you can have the judgment, so to speak, the decision about the responsibilities anytime throughout the day. It just happens to be the most exact right here in this 10:30 in the evening time frame. That also can be an energy that impacts both Tuesday, which is where we're at right now, and Wednesday. So as long as you're aware of that, that can feed into a lot of the direction of the new as this week progresses, because we're also shaping into a new moon where there's going to also be a square with Saturn. I'll get to that here in just a second. But Mercury leaves shadow. We get some kind of decision. We get some kind of direction. We're bumping this into the 17th. So now we're into Wednesday. We're going to start the day, of course, with the moon in Scorpio. And the moon is actually going to go through a trine to Saturn right after midnight between 12:30 and 2:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I got this now at 1:30. Here's the moon, 25 degrees, 29 minutes. And here's Saturn, 25 degrees, 29. So we go through this exact trine while simultaneously the sun is still in the square. So part of the judgment, part of the decision, part of the thing around the elders, the boss, part of the responsibility that is identified, part of the decision, the judgment, so to speak, is going to impact more than one area. But I'm also looking at the fact the moon is in Mars' sign, and Mars just went into Saturn's sign. It just went into Capricorn. So part of this vibration is a part of the new. It's feeding into the new. Even if it's impacting more than one person, more than one area, more than one sign, it's still feeding into the new. All right, we're going to get this going a little bit more. Go into the morning time between 6:30 and 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm going to bump this to 8:30 because this is going to encompass both. The moon, 28 degrees, 58.6, is going to go into this opposition to Uranus. We're going to have something exciting. We have some kind of unexpected meeting, some unexpected run-in. For some people, again, it's exciting. For other people, it's going to be around your technology. Simultaneously, the moon is going to go through a trine to Neptune. Now, this is going to go the most exact between 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. So that tells me there's a rush of energy in the dynamic. For some people, it will be exciting. For other people, it might be a little bit confusing. Right here in the morning time, most exact between 6:30 and 10:30 in the morning. That's why I have it at 8:30, because it's kind of doing both. It goes to that opposition to Uranus. It goes through the trine to Neptune. For some people, this is going to be like something unexpected coming through, but it is still kind of in that environmental impact, like things that are going in our surroundings. For other people, there's going to be some kind of exciting news or exchange, some type of unexpected news and exchange with the moon Uranus. And then afterwards, it's like, but what do I do with this now? And that comes down to the moon's trine to Neptune. For some people, it is going to be a creative energy, a manifestation energy. For other people, it's going to be lies, fraud, deception. You hear something unexpected. You go ask somebody what the hell they were doing, and they lied to your face, and you know that they're lying. And I hate when that happens, but it's true. People do this all the time. There can be something around lies, fraud, deception with the trine to Neptune, but for other people, it is going to be an inspiration. It's going to be something that kind of captures our attention. There can be some levels of appreciation. Now that Neptune is direct, I'm a little less likely to go with lies, fraud, deception, unless it's like the unexpected revealing of something. But right after the moon goes through this opposition to Uranus and the trine to Neptune, at 10:39 a.m. Central Standard Time, so I'm bumping this now to 11:30, the moon goes into Sagittarius. Yeah, the moon is now in Sagittarius. And as soon as the moon goes into Sagittarius, we are now in the new moon vibration. And there is something here that we want to do. There's something here that we want to understand. There is something here that we are wanting to finally complete. Now, the thing about new moons is that there's a new vibration that comes through. There's something that comes to light. There's something that gets revealed. There's something that comes into focus. There's a dawning of something new. But given the way the rest of the energy is unfolding, and the fact that this new moon will actually happen at the very late degrees of Sagittarius, this doesn't feel so subsequently new that it's going to be something that completely comes through this week. For some people, it's going to solidify a completion. It's going to solidify a wrap up. It's going to solidify some final loose ends in certain ways, because there is something new on the horizon, but it's not directly from the new moon. It's actually from the planets that are going to change signs. Mars already has, but after the new moon, the sun will also change sign. So I am truly reading this as there's something that must be solidified once the moon goes into Sagittarius. So we're new moon energy all the way through. There's something that must be solidified, because it's like once this is encapsulated, once this is agreed upon, once this completely shows through, it's like the reaction is infectious. It goes into that impulse energy. It is the optimism for some. It is the fueling of a belief for other, but it is also going to impact the directional shift of the new normal. For some people, this will be a mundane new kind of energy with the moon in Sagittarius, but for other people, it is going to be something that like fully makes a connection in a whole different way. And for some people, it's an unexpected and unintended direction, but it's also still feeding into the directions. I know that's kind of hard to follow, but it's a very interesting energy. So let's keep this going. Let's get back into the charts. Of course, the moon is now in Sagittarius. Hello, everybody. Now, once the moon goes into Sagittarius, he's not doing anything immediately. He will once we get into the afternoon. So between 2:30 and 4:30 p.m. I got this now at 3:30. The moon is going to go through a sextile to Pluto. You can see it right here, 2 degrees 24. Here's Pluto, 2 degrees 18. There is something again about the hopefulness, the boastfulness, where we can overcome a power struggle with the Pluto part, where we're going to get some kind of solution. We might not immediately see a solution. There can be something around the mechanics of something whenever the moon hits the sextile to Pluto, or plumbing situations, things that have been going on behind the scenes, below the surface. So it can still do with the secrets element, but for some of us, the mundane stuff is like sometimes Pluto transits is quite literally the plumbing. So, and I know every time I say that, I get a message from somebody going, I hate when you're right. It's like, well, it happens sometimes. I'm a Plutonian person and I've dealt with the plumbing issues. So it is that. But again, Pluto is going over areas of the sky where he's already done things before, where he's already been before. So I don't feel like this part, so to speak, is as frustrating for some people, but it is still going to have a way of manifesting. It feels really small and mundane compared to the rest of the week, but there can be like this fluke thing that happens like Wednesday afternoon that kind of happens in a way that doesn't fit the rest of the vibration, and it might be heavy for one person but not so heavy for another. That's the best way I can describe it. But then after that sextile to Pluto, there ain't nothing going on. The moon's just in Sagittarius, and there's this hopefulness, there's this boastfulness, there's this attitude, there is ADHD brain all the way. That's the one thing about whenever so many planets are going through Sagittarius, it's like you can't focus on anything. That ADHD brain of like, I want to do this and this and this and this. It's like the little dog, like bum ba bum ba bum ba bum bum bum. And that is definitely going to be a lot of people's vibration. Going through Wednesday, now going into Thursday, we're still in that ADHD brain. That's the best way I can describe it, with the moon in Sagittarius. Like, we're so hopeful and it's boastful and it's popping and it's bumpy and it's bouncy. It's very bouncy. Javad Evans kind of bouncy. And if you don't know who that is, you're not a wrestling fan. That's the best way I can describe that. Okay. Between 3 and 5 a.m. So I got this now at 3:30. The moon is in a conjunction to Mercury. You can see that right here. Mercury is newly out of shadow. So we're getting some new confirmations, some new type of meetings, some new type of commitment, some new types of contracts. I'm going off of the written form of Mercury right there. For some people, it's the contracts. For some people, it's a new form of communication. It's having that coffee date. Not all of us are going to have that coffee date at 3:30 in the morning. Let's be fair. For some people, that will manifest in the early mornings. But there is some type of like commitment meeting that still has a hopeful, boastful vibration as we go through the day. So we're going to keep this going. Speaking of going through the day, we're getting closer to Jupiter's square to Chiron. And again, I'm going to focus on this whenever, one, we have the exactness at the end of the week, but two, at the closing. But the reason I want to bring that up now is the fact that as we get into the afternoon, I'm going to get this to 3:30. Here we go. And what we have here is Venus in Jupiter's sign, so in Sagittarius, going through a trine to Chiron. There's something here about, again, the outside passion, the desire, the extra element that we did not see coming, that we did not understand, that we did not focus on. But considering the moon and Jupiter are right now in mutual reception, there's areas of the sky that wouldn't normally work together. There are people in our lives that wouldn't normally work together that are finding ways to come together. They are finding ways in this innate moment to find solutions. Chiron is the wounded healer. For some people, we need to work out the solutions to fix something. We need to talk about the process of how we overcome some things. We need to release certain fears around old wounds. And again, Venus is in Jupiter's sign as Jupiter is starting to perfect its square to Chiron. So sometimes you can get advice from someone that has nothing to do with a situation, but it's so profound that it's like, are you sure you don't know the other person? Are you sure you don't know the whole story? Because you know a lot. It's like, no, 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 this is called life experience, baby. Life experience can give you a lot of sage advice in the end. And Venus hitting this trine to Chiron, it feels like getting support from a situation, about a situation, from somebody that has a deeper understanding than you might realize, but literally has nothing to do with the situation. So it's almost eerie by how resounding, like resonating, that advice is going to be. It's like they're completely outside of the situation, yet still they can feed into the vibration towards the solution. I love it, but at the same time, I know there's going to be some people like, where did that advice even come from? And that makes a lot of sense. Now, the layers of this advice is going to feed into the energy as we go into Friday. I want to be clear about that because we're going to have the moon hit the conjunction to Venus and the sun and that trine to Chiron. So there are layers to the unintended that are feeding into the solution. They're feeding into the actions that we take now. They're feeding into why we needed to do the opposite. And I was going to go back and again, I'll explain that more in the closing. Oh, so we're going to keep this going. After Venus is trine to Chiron, the moon is in Sag, but there's nothing directly going on. So we're still vibing. We're still kind of going through the motions. We're doing a lot of shifts in the energy. We're still very ADHD brained. We're getting into the 19th. Now, on the 19th is the new moon, but it's not going to happen until the evening time. But we've been in new moon vibration for literally since the moon went into Sagittarius. So for 2 days now, we've been in this new moon vibration. And as we get to the points of this day, we're going to really kind of connect in a different way. And again, whatever we're connecting, whatever we're putting together, whatever shifting into focus needs to be completed as one element to what feeds into the new normal. Like once this is complete, it's like, great, now solidified, done, cool. Now I can go do this. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm feeling. So we're going to keep this going. In the morning time, between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, so I got this now at 10:30, the moon is going to hit that conjunction to Venus right after it went through its trine to Chiron. So that actually happened first, and I forgot to put that down. So the moon went through the trine to Chiron roughly between 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning, and then right afterwards, the moon hit the conjunction to Venus. So again, we had a revisiting in this morning time of like the outside solution, the advice that we were given, the perspective that we were given from an outside source, but that still has a very sage level of understanding. It's talking to the right shaman, it is talking to the right person and getting like a life level of advice that we wouldn't normally get, but it's a fueling energy. It's an excitable energy. It's an acceptance energy. We have a solution in mind. We have some level of connection once the moon hits the full conjunction to Venus, and that's between 9:30 and 11:30. About the appearance of something, our appreciation of something, how happy something makes us feel. And this is one of those things that if you put it in like a mundane, like we had to do all of this work, we had to work through a couple of solutions, but now we have the best light show on the house on the block. Like we had to go through all these hurdles, but we completely put something together that was beautiful and magnanimous, and you appreciate it and you're so happy for it. Even if it's something short-lived, it's just like, oh, I'm so glad we were able to work this out. And there's extra layers to how this day is going to progress. So we're going to keep this going. Between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, the moon, as it's gearing into its new moon energy, which we're not quite into yet, the moon is going to go through this square to Saturn. So you can see the moon 25 degrees, 17 minutes, hitting a square to Saturn at 25:34. It's a little bit closer to exact at 2 p.m., but I always like to give that 2-hour window. So between 1 and 3 p.m., that's whenever this square is going to go on. Now, this feels like it's also connected to whatever happened earlier in the week when the sun hit the square to Saturn. Because remember, the moon was hitting the trine while the sun was in the square. So this feels like a continuation of news, of an arrival, of a judgment, of a decision, of a solution. that is signifying this thing that is being put together, completed, confirmed based off of the new moon. And we're going to keep this going because the new moon is actually going to go exact at its 7:43 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I'm going to bump this now to 7:30 because that's going to be close enough. Here's the moon's conjunction to the sun. I will, of course, do a new moon video later in the week whenever we get closer to this time frame. This is a new moon happening at the very end of a sign. This is a new moon hitting a square to Neptune, and simultaneously, Venus is starting her square to Saturn. Now, these two will actually perfect their squares over the course of the weekend. So there is something that is igniting. There is something that is coming into play. There is something that is being confirmed. There is something that is being completed, that is being accomplished. But it's like as soon as it's accomplished, we can then focus on something else. We can either shift our focus to something completely new, or it's like, oh, because I got the car running, now I can drive it. Like I got this completed and now I can use it. Now I can do something with it. Now I can work with it. Now it can feed into this part of the vibration. For some people, that will be a really mundane thing. For other people, maybe I'll get my phone. Anyways, for other people, it's going to be something much, much bigger that is being connected to, committed to, solidified to, as we are going to progress into something, again, more into the new normal. Now, why am I saying that so deeply? One, again, this is a new moon squaring that Neptune. Now, the moon's actual square to Neptune is more so between 9 and 11 p.m., but right at the end of that, at 10:53 p.m., hear me out, bumping this down to 11:30, the moon is going to go into Capricorn. The moon is going to go into Saturn's sign. So there feels like something about this energy that will connect. It will have solutions. It will be something that needs to be completed. And then again, it feeds into the vibration of the new normal. Because as soon as that new moon perfects, the moon's going to go into Saturn's sign. Once the weekend is done, the sun is going to go into Saturn's sign. And there's this like immediate like confirmation, committed. This is it. Now we can shift. Now we can use it. Now it's a tool. Now we can focus. Now we can go. Now we can do this other thing. Now that this is handled, I can bring this into this other thing. There is a connection in the vibration once the moon goes into Capricorn. And from there, there is a productiveness. There's a motivation. There is more tuning as to what pieces are going on to what area of the playing board. And by the time we get to this energy, we might be a little bit more aware of what the game is, at least by the end of the weekend. For some of us, again, it's going to be chess. For other people, it's going to be complicated. It's going to be some like some Chinese checkers. All right, now moving along. The moon is now in Capricorn. And as soon as the moon goes into Capricorn, he ain't doing nothing. Not immediately. We're going to go straight into Saturday. We're going straight into the 20th. And in the morning time, between 5:30 and 7:30 a.m., so now I got this at 6:30, the moon is going to hit a conjunction to Mars. This feels like a disruptive commitment, a disruptive meeting, a disruptive situation. This feels like turning the wrong corner and having some kind of frustration for some people. For other people, it is going to be the profound conversation towards the solution or towards how we overcome the healing. Why am I saying that? Mars is still hosting Chiron. Chiron and Jupiter are getting closer to their square. And a lot of this energy is in Jupiter's sign. The rest of the transits, so Mercury, Venus, the Sun, North Node, Saturn, Neptune, all of these are in Jupiter's signs. So much of this energy is feeding into the meetings that we must have towards a solution, towards the steps in healing, what productiveness we need to have moving forward to put something into a new order. The new order is not going to be quick because the final square between Chiron and Jupiter, it's not going to perfect until July of 2026. That's a long ass time. But at the same time, with as fast as next year will go, it's not going to be that long. But there is something that is dawning us back all the way into that vibration that we were setting back in October that's now feeding into this energy. It's now feeding into the game. It's now feeding into the direction. And for some of us, we're going to start the day on Saturday either having a disruptive situation, Moon conjunct Mars. We're going to get the disruptive call of something that we were not anticipating. For other people, this is accepting a gear shift and accepting a motivation. Mars can be pivotal or chaotic. He's disruptive either way. It really comes down to your perception and how it is manifesting. So here's the moon's conjunction to Mars. I'm going to keep this going. As we get into the evening time, what I will say about the weekend is whenever the sun is going through its square to Neptune, which it's not quite here yet, but we're in this perfection. Anytime you have harsh squares to Neptune, it is hard to focus. So the ADHD brain is still very, very active. And for some people, we're trying to get an understanding of something that we can't completely understand, or we are trying to distract ourselves into something based off of this part of the vibration. Now, in the evening time between 6:55 and 7:18, so I got this now, it's 6:30, that's gonna be fine. The sun, 29 degrees, 24 minutes, is going to go through its square to Neptune, 29-24. That is when this is the most exact. Now, for some people, the disruptive of the morning time, it's like after that disruption, we don't know what to do, and it's hard to focus. It's hard to understand something. It's hard to believe something. That's the sun square Neptune. But once we get through this fogginess, because there is kind of a fogginess anytime we have something in interaction to Neptune. Once we're able to work through the fogginess and the haziness, once we're able to come to terms with something, there is going to be a gear shift. Now, I don't feel like the gear shift is Saturday. I feel like it's more going to be the next day on Sunday, whenever the sun goes into Capricorn, but we're still in this like hazy, foggy, kind of confused, not really sure what to do, trying to learn something, trying to understand something. And there is this other part, which isn't exact yet, but I'm still going to reference it now. It goes exact between 10:52 and 11:10. And that is Venus going through its square to Saturn. Earlier in the week, we had a sun square Saturn. Last week, we had Mars square to Saturn. Venus is in the higher authority. Venus is super happy being in a Jupiterian sign. And this has got solutions. This has got benefits. This is talking about the appearance of something, the usage of something, the approach of something, the taste of something being the new focus, being the new responsibility, being a part of the new normal, getting a desire in here. So as much as the sun's square to Neptune can be very foggy and hazy, there is still some level of benefit. And again, some of us are not going to see it coming based on Venus in the higher authority hitting this square to Saturn. This is what I want from you moving forward. This is how I want it to appear. This is the ingredients I want you to use. This is what I desire. This is what we want. And if you will listen to me, we'll be able to reveal something and do something very, very big next year. That's a foreshadowing comment. I want to be clear about that. Again, the sun square Neptune is the most exact between 10:52 and 11:10 p.m. Or sorry, the sun square Neptune is most exact between 6:55 and 7:18. Venus square to Neptune is the most exact between 10:52 and 11:10. I said those backwards. So be aware that you're not getting a whole lot done over the weekend, but we could be very blinded by the potential of something. Again, there's a level of inspiration sometimes whenever it comes to Neptune transits, but there's still a very big fogginess of like, again, I want to do something, but I don't know how to really do it right now. And that can be a big part of the vibration. Now we're going to get into the 21st. We're getting into Sunday. The moon is going to be in Capricorn all day long, but right after midnight, that is when we start Jupiter's exact square to Chiron. So you can see this right here. This is going to be the most exact between 1:14 and 4:41 a.m. By the time we get into the evening, the moon will also join this up. So I want to just kind of keep this going. And again, I want to have a bigger kind of story at the closing around Jupiter Chiron. As we go into the morning time at 9:04 a.m., so we're going to move this now to 9:30. That is whenever the sun goes into Capricorn. This is where we start winter officially. The first day of Capricorn season is the first day of winter. Hello, winter solstice. That is this vibration. It will be the shortest day of the year, and everything from here is a buildup of the light. It is a buildup in the vibration. It's just making things a little bit longer after this day, which is beautiful. We're going to keep this going into the evening time so I can show you the moon's aspect between 6:30 and 8:30. So I want to give a bigger window and say between 6 and 9 p.m., but it's the most exact right here at the 7:30 mark. Here we go. The moon in Capricorn is going to go through a opposition to Jupiter. So here's the moon 2237, here's Jupiter 2235. But simultaneously, it will enter the square to Chiron. Now, I want to explain something about this Jupiter Chiron stuff. And I didn't explain before why I was so adamant of like, you need to do the opposite. This was my advice, but I didn't tell you guys why. And I had to go back to the last time there was a Chiron Jupiter square. And this goes back to, I had to go back. Mentally, where did I go? 2000, why am I blank on this? 2010, 11 to 12, like right around the time I got married. Sorry, I had to do a life event to make this make sense. And the thing is, the reason I said to do the opposite is I went back in time in my head as to like, what happened the last time we had a Chiron Jupiter square where Chiron was in the higher authority? And that's the bigger part. I wanted Chiron in the higher authority going into Jupiter, and what was the life events I was having at that time. Jupiter was in Gemini, Chiron was in Pisces at that time, and there was a series of 3 even back then. But the thing is like part of that energy, you can always see things differently whenever you look at something from the past. And I saw a pattern that developed a wound going back and thinking of what was before. And that is my pattern of doing the thing that I would normally do would be sacrificial. I would be the one that would sacrifice things for my family. I sacrificed part of my childhood based off of things that had happened. I was the first one to, go through high school. I made sure, I'm not explaining this story well, so I apologize because I am going into something personal right here, but I'm also trying not to divulge a whole lot. So give me a second. I've always been the sacrificial one, whether it is for my grandmother, whether it was for my sisters, whether it has been for my mom, because some of you guys know that I take care of her full time. But there was a moment that happened back in that time frame where my sacrificialness was used against me. And it was used against me by my new mother-in-law. That's the length I'm going to say in this story. It was used against me. And it was also a long-term wound that took me years to get over. And the only way I finally did kind of get over it was there was a divorce. Yay, yeah. And if there wasn't a divorce, then I wouldn't be doing this. So this was a very necessary thing. But because my normal nature of doing something very sacrificial, because it's going to take care of the family, it takes care of everybody. It's the best way to make everybody whole and safe. So I will sacrifice my mind, my time, my body, my security to help someone else. In the last time we had a Chiron Jupiter square, I did sacrificial things for someone that I was considering family because it was my new mother-in-law. Let's be fair. But over time, that was used against me, and that became a wound. I repeated my normal pattern because I thought I was helping the family. I was helping my new family, the family I had married into. But the thing is, that got used against me. What I sacrificed for was based off of a lie. And I didn't know it until it was too late. And then it became a constant source of a wound. Then it became a constant source of frustration and fighting and tension. And when I saw the transit repeating this year, my big advice to everybody is like, do the opposite so shit doesn't get used against you. Do the opposite. Do the opposite. Don't do what you would normally do, because this is how we break the pattern instead of submitting ourselves to wounds. Now, the thing about this part of Sunday that I'm showing you, whenever the Jupiter Chiron goes exact, but not only that, we have the moon entering and creating a T-square. And for those that don't know what a T-square is, it literally looks like this. It looks like a T. You can see that right here. So we have the moon, Chiron, Jupiter. If we did the opposite before, now we have the ability to see a different solution. We can see how we were wounded before, but how we can also break the pattern. And once we get a better understanding of breaking the pattern, we can also then explain that to other people. We can also then give lessons to others. We can also then give feedback to others. And I feel like that's where the moon comes in the Jupiter Chiron square. It's like we've came to a solution, we've came to an idea, we've came to a commitment that's months in the making, but it required us making a change in our behavior. And the big reason I said we had to change the behaviors because that was a stationing Jupiter back in October. Jupiter was still direct, hadn't turned retrograde yet, but it was slowing down to go retrograde. Now, Jupiter is retrograde, hitting that square to Chiron. Chiron has been retrograde both times. And each square between Jupiter and Chiron is going to be different. But the third and final one, in my opinion, is the most impactful. See, this energy gave us the chance to either repeat our pattern and let it become a wound that will be very hard to heal in the long run. And for some of you, it won't get healed until there was a divorce. I don't know anything about that. Okay. But for other people, if you were able to break your own pattern, you were able to start to see something from a different perspective. And now we can face something to be able to finally address an old wound. And there's so much of this energy that feels like by addressing the old wound, by allowing something new to take shape, by allowing certain things to transition, it is also feeding into another pattern, a pattern where we don't, again, repeat the things that we did before. You don't need to sacrifice so much of yourself. You don't need to push for things to happen because if they were going to happen, they would happen naturally. There's some things that you don't have to push them so hard. You have to do the routine, the maintenance, and the hustle. That's what I call it. It's you have to do your hustle, but you don't have to beat your head against the wall. This is two different, very, very different things. And if you focus before on doing something that you would not normally do, you don't need to fix everyone's problems. You don't need to sacrifice your own mental health and security for other people. You don't need to drink too much and project whatever we project on. Sometimes Jupiter can have a drinking effect. We don't need to do some of the things from before. But now we have a different outlook. Now we can have a different mentality. For some people, you weren't able to figure it out. You weren't able to do the opposite. You weren't able to figure out quite what it was. For some people, it was very clear. As soon as it came through, you were like, oh, not my mess. No, don't want it. For other people, it was harder. And as we get to the end of this week, some of you might actually be more frustrated by how you did something and now how wounded we can feel. And that energy with the moon going into the T square feels like telling someone else about, I shouldn't have done it this time. I shouldn't have given so much of myself. I shouldn't have helped them out. I shouldn't have gave them the money. I shouldn't have worked the extra shifts. I shouldn't have put myself out there. It was a risk that did not have reward. And because we didn't break our patterns, now we have a different kind of responsibility. And for some of you, you're not going to like the responsibility that comes through. You're not going to like the new passion. You're not going to like the new ambition, the new normal. You're not going to like it because you were trying to do something else, or you thought you were doing something else. And now there's some extra element that comes through that doesn't speak as clearly as you had once desired. Now, I'm just getting a handle on Chiron's energy. I'll be honest about that. This last year, I've put a lot of focus in learning and understanding Chiron. And some of you in your individual sessions, I have spoke to you about the wounds of Chiron, or we've done some troubleshooting to really figure out the wounds of Chiron. Some people don't actually fully uncover their wounds until they have their Chiron return. And that's whenever something gets released. That's when something breaks through. But if you can learn them younger, earlier, and get a better understanding, then you put yourself in a position to teach, to coach, to aid others. You put yourself in a position to no longer carry certain burdens in the same way. It really comes down to how much we commit to our healing process. And Jupiter and Chiron is committing to a healing process that, again, feeds into our new normal. And there's a lot of the energy that we have dealt with over the course of the last 2 months, so since October, that are directly going to impact July of next year. June, July, and August, but the most intense on July. And if you know that now, that the decisions of now, the patterns of now, the repeating of certain energies or the breaking of certain habits will directly impact a series of events months from now that puts you in a different position of power, personal power, and giving you the chance to be able to respond versus being reactive. So much of 2025's energy has been a reactive energy. We're reacting to the frustrations. We're reacting to things going wrong. We've been reacting to the breaks, the break in faith, the break in pattern, the breaks in our jobs, the breaks of something. Anything that broke in 2025 was supposed to break. It was a 9-year. It was the end of cycles. But once the cycle is over, we go into the new. And so much of 2026 is about the new. And if we finally broke certain patterns, then it has put you in a different position of where we go next into that new normal. And that's why I was saving the Chiron Jupiter stuff to the end. I kind of goofed up on telling my story because I didn't want to tell you everything, but it is what it is. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the shares. I express my gratitude to you guys every single time I have an episode, as well as my own daily gratitude every single day. I am so immensely grateful for the trust that you guys give me. I do and love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.